Really interesting that these hunter-gatherers, a tribe called the Chamane, do not experience testosterone decline as they age. The study specifically mentioned, direct quote, whereas men in the US show a decline in testosterone as they age, Chamane men maintain a stable amount of testosterone across their lifespan. So the key point is that this testosterone decline with age doesn't seem to apply to hunter-gatherers. But it's not just exclusive to the Chamane. They aren't some genetic anomaly. There was another study that looked at 4 total populations. They looked at the US, and then they looked at hunter-gatherer style societies in the Congo, Nepal, and Paraguay. And the researchers stated the most important general observation from these data is that age-related decline in free testosterone is not a uniform characteristic of all populations. To make this a little more easy to understand, I actually graphed all of this data from the study so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. In the white, you can see that American men from Massachusetts had a direct linear decrease in testosterone with age after age 29. However, these hunter-gatherers from the Congo, Nepal, and Paraguay, their testosterone levels declined slightly, but then they flatlined and they maintained healthy testosterone levels all the way into their 60s. Now, you might notice that these hunter-gatherer tribes have lower baseline testosterone levels than American men, right? You can see up here, Americans have higher testosterone, and the hunter-gatherer societies have slightly lower baseline. The reason for this is also true for the Chamane, these guys here. The reason for this is because hunter-gatherers experience a lot of pathogen exposure, so they don't have modern medicine. And they have, for this reason, an overactive immune system. And in the body, energy can't be created or destroyed. So in order to support the immune system, the reproductive system through which testosterone is associated has to be downregulated so that that energy can be used for the immune system. But they also experience a lot of food deprivation. Hunter-gatherers don't have an abundance of calories like we do. And chronic hunger and lack of calories also has a negative effect on testosterone. So those are the 2 reasons why they have lower baseline testosterone levels. But since they, for reasons that we'll talk about shortly, they don't experience a continued decline in testosterone as they age, unlike Americans. This is also reflected by the fact that these hunter-gatherers remain fertile later in their lives. This study showed that 4 hunter-gatherer populations, one of which is the Chamane, continue reproducing into their 60s and 70s. These blue fillings here show that these guys continue having kids well past their 60s. So in this picture here, this little girl could be this guy's daughter. And the reason why their reproductive age is important to mention in the context of testosterone is because testosterone drives sperm production. So you need to have a healthy amount of testosterone in order to produce sperm to be able to reproduce. So this evidence that they're reproducing into their 60s and 70s supports the notion that they have healthy enough testosterone levels at that age in order to continue having kids. And in the fine print in the bottom left here, the researchers mentioned that the populations presented here likely represent early human demographic conditions and mating patterns. So the translation here is that the pattern of these men having kids later into their lives seems to be reflective of how human beings evolved, which shows that testosterone decline with age might not be something that we're supposed to experience. It seems, based on this, that evolution hardwired us to be able to continue reproducing, which is driven by testosterone. So this raises the question, why don't these hunter-gatherers experience testosterone decline as they age, unlike Americans? The simple reason is because they live healthier lifestyles. This is also reflected by the fact that they have some of the lowest levels of coronary artery disease, so less heart disease, and pretty much every chronic disease is virtually non-existent in these societies. There's basically no obesity, no diabetes, no neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's not just their testosterone levels that remain stable throughout their lives, their overall health does as well. So if these hunter-gatherers don't experience testosterone decline as they age, it follows that the best way for you to maintain optimal testosterone as you age is to live like these guys, is to mimic the lifestyles of modern day hunter-gatherers. And the first is their physical activity levels. This study was looking at how testosterone levels were affected by horticultural, so farming, physical activity that these hunter-gatherers engage in. And the key point for you to see is that the age range of the men studied here was aged 16 to 80. So that means that these men, these chamane men, continued physical labor well into their 80s. Okay? So just maintaining physical activity is a huge contributing factor to keeping your testosterone levels at a healthy range. This same study found that manual labor, very similar to what you see me doing here on the right, essentially they have to clear large swaths of land and remove all the trees so that they can grow some of their crops. This type of physical manual labor increased their testosterone levels by nearly 50%, regardless of age. So younger guys and older guys in this hunter-gatherer tribe all experienced testosterone increases from this physical labor. Now, most of you probably don't have access to wood to chop, but thankfully you can mimic these in typical fitness protocols. Now, as a men's personal trainer, if you didn't know, I'm a personal trainer and I specialize in men's health. These are the exact protocols that I implement not only into my own training, but to my clients' training to optimize their testosterone levels to great effect. So this is where you're going to want to take notes. You need to strength train for up to an hour, ideally not much more than that, at least 3, ideally 5 times per week. During your strength training, you need to maintain a high level of intensity. So you need to keep your heart rate high. So not too much rest in between exercises, not going on your phone. And you should be using compound movements like squats, deadlifts, tire flips like you see in the video, overhead press, chin-ups. These are exercises that use multiple muscles at the same time. And you should go for a full body split. You don't need to divide your body into upper and lower or do chests and triceps push days and back and bicep pull days. Just train your body as a whole. Do that at least 3 to 5 times a week, but you also need to do cardio. The research shows that 2 to 5 hours of cardio is optimal for testosterone production, 2 to 5 hours per week. And you can chop that up into as many sessions as you want, but your sessions of cardio, zone 2, should be no less than 20 minutes, but no more than 80 minutes. So if you do less than 20 minutes of cardio, your body doesn't really get into the zone. But if you go for more than 80 minutes, research shows that that can start to have a negative effect on testosterone, as can exceeding 7 total hours of cardio per week, which is really hard to do. That'd be like going for an hour-long run every single day. There's this misconception that cardio lowers testosterone. But if you think about it, our caveman evolutionary ancestors who we evolved from, as well as these hunter-gatherer tribes, they do a ton of cardio, chasing down prey, going to explore new territories. Human beings evolved to, quote unquote, do cardio, to exercise our cardiorespiratory systems. So you should absolutely be doing cardio. And if you neglect it, if you neglect either cardio or strength training, your testosterone levels will not be optimal. So you need to do both. My recommendation would be 4 days of lifting per week with 1 hour of zone 2 cardio every other day. Now, on the bottom left here, it's interesting to note that the researchers mentioned other studies in industrialized populations, so developed nations like the US, found that the magnitude of testosterone change during resistance activities is diminished in older men compared to younger men. The translation of that is in developed nations, older men don't experience as much of a testosterone increase from exercise as younger men, but in hunter-gatherer tribes, older and younger men both experience significant increases in testosterone following physical activity. So the key point that this conveys is that what you do outside of exercise also matters. And we're going to get into that now. Outside of physical training, your nutrition, what you eat, has a direct, significant effect on your testosterone levels. And in all of my research, I found that the paleo diet is the best diet for testosterone optimization. And this research shows that the paleo diet does increase testosterone levels. So, what exactly is the paleo diet? Well, the word paleo is a contraction of the word Paleolithic, which was the time frame over which most of human evolution occurred when we were cavemen. And the paleo diet mimics the eating patterns of our caveman ancestors, which are also followed by modern day hunter gatherers. So, what would someone eat on a paleo diet? Pretty much only things that can be found out in nature. When in doubt, just think to yourself, would a caveman or a hunter gatherer have access to this food? If the answer is no, it's not on the paleo diet and you shouldn't eat it. To keep it really simple, it's basically just meat, fruits, fish, vegetables, eggs, nuts, and seeds. There's no processed, artificial, man-made food whatsoever. So if you want more detail on how you can implement the paleo diet into your life, I've left a link to an article that I wrote about it in the description that you can check out with more details on the paleo diet. It's also been shown that having kids can lower testosterone. The reason why having kids lowers testosterone is because exposure to infants increases prolactin and oxytocin in men. Prolactin and oxytocin, mostly prolactin, you can think of them essentially as the inverse of testosterone. They have the opposite functions. So why would having kids lower testosterone? Well, if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, one of testosterone's primary roles is giving men sex drive, so encouraging them to go reproduce. So if a caveman, has kids, but then he has high testosterone levels, he's going to want to be more focused on going and reproducing and creating more children. And that's going to occupy his focus more than taking care of the offspring he's already created. So evolution hardwired this mechanism where exposure to babies lowers testosterone levels in the father by increasing prolactin so that he'll be more focused on caring to his child instead of creating new ones with other women. Now, the thing is, this decline in testosterone levels from having kids is actually exaggerated in Western men in comparison to Chamane men. In other words, Chamane men don't experience as significant testosterone declines after having kids as Americans. The reason is because Chamane men need to maintain higher testosterone levels even after having kids to continue providing for them. Remember earlier, we were talking about that physical manual labor they need to do to clear land, to grow food and provide for their families. Well, the researchers mentioned that testosterone increases the performance of our muscles. It helps our muscles work harder. And testosterone is also increased by physical activity in and of itself. So by continuing to engage in physical labor, these guys keep their testosterone levels higher even though they don't have kids. So number one is maintaining physical activity, but also spending time away from the babies. While these guys are out all day working hard to provide for their families, they aren't directly exposed to the infant. So their overall time of exposure to their children is lower because they're out working all day compared to American men, where a lot of us now have paternity leave, and men in our society with nuclear families play a much more hands-on role in helping mothers tend to the offspring. So men are exposed to these prolactin releasing babies all day long, which is not evolutionarily consistent, because even before the Chamane, when human beings were cavemen, the men would have had to go out and forage and hunt and bring back food to provide for their families. So they only would have been exposed to the infants for short windows of time, usually later in the day after they got done hunting. But in modern societies, men are holding their baby and they're around all day long. So this prolonged exposure to infants can exacerbate the testosterone reducing effects that having kids has on men to an extent that is beyond what evolution intended. The key takeaway for you is number one, maintain your physical activity and stay fit, but also this might be a bit controversial. Don't spend all day, every day with your baby. You should also maintain your hobbies, remain involved in your career, get out of the house. Telling you, it's going to be better for the dynamics of your family, because as important as it is for men to be involved, loving fathers that are present, it's also important for fathers to maintain healthy testosterone levels, because healthy fathers are the backbone of healthy families. Another factor that affects testosterone levels is stress. And in Western societies, we are chronically stressed all the time. There's a lot of research that stress levels are consistently high in our society. And stress hormone cortisol has a inverse effect on testosterone. In other words, the more stressed you are and the higher your cortisol levels are, the lower your testosterone levels are going to be in response. Whereas the chamane, I mean, look at these guys. In every photo, even though they live really hard lives, they're smiling, they look happy, they're relaxed. These chamane men are not nearly as stressed. And there's a couple other reasons for this. Number one is that being exposed to nature, so being outside in the natural world, has been scientifically proven to lower stress levels. And most of us in the modern world, in our offices, in our cubicles, under artificial light, aren't exposed to the sun, fresh air, and the woods. So a key protocol that you can follow is spend some time in nature, maybe even just a couple times a week. Going for a walk in the woods can significantly lower your stress. But also, stress evolved to be acute, which means short term, not chronic, meaning long term. Stress evolved to just make us, notice the tiger, activate the fight or flight response, and run away, and then stress goes back down. But in the modern world, since we perceive so many things to be threats all day, every day, our stress levels are always a little bit high. Oh, what is my boss going to think of my presentation? Oh, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm stressed. Oh, I got to get this report done on time. We constantly have high levels of stress. To counteract that, I highly recommend meditation and Stoicism. Meditation lowers your stress through deep breathing, and Stoicism trains you to stop perceiving everything as a stressful threat. If you want to learn more about meditation and Stoicism, I'll leave resources in the description for that as well. But another factor that relates to stress is community. Having a healthy social life has been shown to lower stress in human beings. But interestingly and unfortunately, 15% of men in this survey reported having no close friendships, which is a 5-fold increase since 1990. And other research shows that social withdrawal is associated with a higher risk of low testosterone. Men in modern societies are more isolated than ever, and social isolation has a negative effect on testosterone production. But in pretty much every hunter-gatherer society, this is also seen in the Hadza, and just throughout human history, community and camaraderie and brotherhood with other men has been integral to our lives and our being as humans. But now everyone just kind of goes to work, comes home, and there's not much community. So key point for you, get involved in your community and also have some camaraderie with other men. Human beings, we're hunter-gatherers, we're tribal organisms. We evolved to go out and hunt and gather with other men. So this masculine camaraderie that we get by having exposure to other men is really important and can have an effect on your testosterone. Now, in that light, another really interesting study on these chamane hunter-gatherers found that physical competition increases testosterone levels by 30.1%, again, regardless of age. The type of competition they specifically looked at was a form of soccer that they play. So for you, I highly recommend some sort of a martial art like jiu-jitsu that you see on the left, or kickboxing, wrestling, any type of physical martial art, or even a sport like pickup basketball with your buddies, or flag football or rugby. Ideally something physical is going to improve your testosterone levels. Now, I'll be totally transparent. These increases in testosterone are acute. So they're just a short-term increase and then they go back down. But in my mind, if you consistently engage in competition a few times a week, those short-lived spikes will continue repeating themselves, which can lead to overall higher testosterone levels. The other cool thing about competition is it's a great way to motivate yourself to exercise if you're not the type of person that likes to exercise just for the sake of exercising. Like in my experience doing jujitsu, I know a lot of guys that would never lift weights or do cardio if it wasn't for the benefits that it has on their jujitsu performance. But even if you don't lift and do cardio, which is a big mistake in my opinion, just doing jujitsu in and of itself is a great form of exercise. So competition is great because it kills three birds with one stone: exercise, competition, and community and camaraderie, all of which positively affect your testosterone levels regardless of your age, as shown in this research. Another factor is endocrine disrupting chemicals. These are chemicals in our environment, and when they get into our bodies, they have a negative effect on not only testosterone production, but also sperm production. They've been shown to cause cancer and all sorts of other chronic diseases. Now, the most common sources of these chemicals are plastics and pesticides. And as you'll notice, these are man-made chemicals that did not exist until they were both invented around the 1960s. And I actually studied the effects of these chemicals on testosterone and sperm counts in men and wrote a whole thesis on it. I spent a whole year on this project and found a statistically significant negative correlation between the prevalence of these chemicals in our society and the sperm counts and testosterone levels of men in our society. So these chemicals absolutely have a negative effect. And if you want to learn more about how you can reduce your exposure to these chemicals, I'll leave my thesis and also some more resources for you in the description so you can learn how to avoid them. But hunter-gatherers in the modern day and the hunter-gatherers that lived before these chemicals even existed wouldn't have been exposed to these chemicals. So their testosterone levels would not be negatively affected by them. Unlike in the modern day, our food is sprayed with pesticides and then comes packaged in plastic, which doubles our exposure to these chemicals. So avoiding them is a important measure to take to maintain optimal testosterone as you age. Now, another factor, like we talked about earlier, is sleep. But it's not just getting enough sleep. It's about getting good quality sleep consistently. Consistently is huge here. Now, first of all, hunter-gatherers, whether it be the Chamane or pre-modern hunter-gatherers, would never have been sleep deprived because they didn't wake up to alarms. They slept until they woke up naturally. So you can mimic this in your own life by just going to bed a lot earlier and letting yourself sleep until you wake up naturally with plenty of time to get to work or whatever you need to do. So sleep deprivation wouldn't have been a problem for these guys, but their sleep quality is also perfect because modern hunter-gatherers, the way that they live is in perfect alignment with how human beings evolved, which was with the rising and the setting of the sun. The rising of the sun tells our bodies it's time to be awake, and the setting of the sun tells our bodies it's time to be asleep. The problem in the modern day is, number one, most people don't get enough outdoor natural sun exposure in general, but we also are exposed to bright and blue artificial lights into the evening late at night. And the problem with this is it tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime and it's time to stay awake, even though it's actually time to go to bed. And this disrupts your deep sleep cycles. And most of your testosterone is actually produced in your sleep. So if you have disrupted sleep, your testosterone levels are going to be disrupted. Additionally, getting sunlight, natural bright sunlight in your eyes in the morning is really important, not only for your sleep quality about 12 hours later, because when you first view sunlight in the morning, it sends signals in your brain to release melatonin 12 hours later. So getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning will cause your brain to release melatonin at the right time. But getting sunlight in the morning also increases dopamine and testosterone levels, because those two, dopamine is a neurotransmitter and testosterone is a hormone. They basically give you alertness and energy. So to distill all of this into actionable takeaways for you is to live like a hunter-gatherer and get good quality sleep. You need to view natural sunlight in the morning and reduce your exposure to bright and blue lights in the evening. which is why I highly recommend these red smart light bulbs on the far right that you can see in the video. Those mimic the color of the sun as it's setting, so you can have them on in your house and still see without negatively affecting your sleep. I'll also leave a link to a video about sleep right here. And I'll also leave a link to more resources that you can use to optimize your sleep naturally. So I know that was a bit of a lot, but these hunter-gatherers maintain optimal testosterone levels well into old age because they get enough quantity and quality sleep for their entire lives. And sleep is one of the most important aspects of having healthy testosterone levels. And the last point is that you should never retire. Now, bear with me here. I'll tie this into your testosterone levels and how it makes sense. The researchers in one of those studies about the chamane mentioned that male production needs to remain high throughout life in order to provision offspring and grand offspring. This means that men need to be productive contributors to society for their entire lives in these hunter-gatherer societies. This goes to show that these men never stop contributing to their tribe. Now, we also have research showing that loss of employment lowers testosterone levels. So could it be that losing employment had a negative effect on testosterone, not only because of the psychological toll that it takes on men due to the stress and everything, but maybe it could be that simply contributing to society and providing value has a subconscious psychological effect on men's testosterone levels, because as we know, men evolved to continue contributing to society for their entire lives. And retirement is really just a societal construct in the modern world. So my thesis here is that when you retire, you lose your sense of purpose, which is one of the highest levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you can see on the bottom right here. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is basically all of the human needs, from our most basic needs, food, water, shelter, air, all the way to the top, which is self-actualization, which is basically having a sense of purpose and meaning in life. Something that I've noticed researching testosterone all these years is that if any of these needs are missing, it has a negative effect on testosterone. For example, if you are missing food, your testosterone levels will be lower. If you are missing belonging, you don't have any sense of community, like we saw with those guys who were socially isolated, that has a negative effect on testosterone. So if at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a sense of self-actualization, a sense of purpose, a sense of purpose can be defined as contributing to society in a way that is beyond you. It's helping others. If that's at the top of the list, then being deprived of that very likely has a negative effect on testosterone levels, because there's also research showing that a man's level of status is correlated with his testosterone. And how do most people get their sense of status? How do most people get their sense of purpose? Most people get both from their jobs, from their career. So when you retire, you lose both your sense of status, but also your sense of purpose, which could have a dual negative effect on your testosterone levels, causing them to decline even lower as you get older. Again, it might not just be getting older that lowers testosterone. It could be retirement and the subsequent loss of status and purpose that comes with it. The key point for you is, even if you retire from your normal job, you should continue to contribute to society in a way that is meaningful to you, in a way that gives you a sense of purpose. This could be something as simple as getting involved in the community or writing articles about topics that you find to be important or overlooked, or starting some sort of a business or a company that solves a problem that you think is important. And even at a deeper level, a lot of men almost mentally retire even in middle age. I know too many guys, unfortunately, in my experience as a personal trainer, A lot of guys just hate their jobs. They're in this dead-end career that they don't really like. So they're just mentally checked out and they don't have much zest and passion for what they do. And I'm telling you, that zest and passion for your purpose is, I don't have scientific data to prove it, but my hypothesis is that zest and passion, that physical energy that you get from doing something that you love, comes from the production of testosterone. Because evolutionarily speaking, as shown in this research, men need to continue contributing to society for their whole lives, which is driven by testosterone. So I know that was a lot I threw at you. I hope it makes sense, but I would highly recommend that you never retire and always align your life with a sense of mission that's meaningful to you. And that will have a psychological effect on your testosterone levels, which is especially important as you age. A question that commonly comes up for guys as they get older is, should you go on TRT? My answer to that is it's largely context dependent, but as a general rule of thumb, I would say most men don't need TRT until they're at least in their 50s or 60s, but you should definitely not go on TRT if you aren't already doing everything you can to be as healthy as physically possible. If you are not already consistently exercising, eating the paleo diet, getting enough good quality sleep, managing your stress, and having a sense of purpose in life, if you're not already doing all of these things that have a positive effect on your testosterone, you shouldn't go near TRT, because it's probably just that you're missing some health or psychological component that is dropping your testosterone levels, and it's not actually your age. Now, if you are doing everything you can to optimize your testosterone levels naturally, and you're in your mid to late 50s or 60s and you're noticing just a little bit of drop, yeah, TRT is probably not a big deal. But if you're anywhere younger than 50, be really careful, because TRT can be a crutch and it can be used as a substitute for the natural ways of optimizing your testosterone, which means you'll be missing those, which is not a good thing. Now, if you're younger or you're still planning on having more kids at some point, definitely approach TRT with caution, because there are concerns about fertility and dependency that I'm not going to get into right now, but just something you should be aware of if you have more children as something that's on the horizon for you. So I hope that by the end of this video, you've realized that your testosterone levels are directly in your control and are mostly caused by your overall health and not your age. That's all that I have for this video. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget that you have all those resources available to you in the top link of the description, and I'll see you in the next one.